Savvy Central Radio, drawing out the best from our guests with your host, Christina Nitchman.
Your business, your dream. How to have the business you love, the life you want, and the financial freedom you desire. Sign up today at yourbusinessyourdream.com. This is your host, Christina Nitchman. Each week, Savvy runs weekly broadcasts providing entrepreneurs and successful individuals a platform to express their dreams, hopes, lessons learned, expertise, and wisdom with the world. Our first guest today is Clark Eide, an American-born monastery devotee and writer who lives in Uruguay and France. Today, Clark shares his fascinating book, A Monk's Way, The Journey to Awareness. Find out more about Clark and his wonderful book, A Monk's Way, at clarkeide.com. Our second guest, Chuck Blakeman, who's owned 7 businesses in 4 continents, shares his extraordinary entrepreneurial wisdom and how entrepreneurs can get out of their way and make more money. Find out more about Chuck and his business at chuckblakeman.com. Hi, Clark. Welcome to Savvy Central Radio. How are you today?
Well, I'm good, Christina, and thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to have you. You have a tremendous journey. You're going to come on today and share a little bit about your wonderful book, A Monk's Way, and how you came to creating it. Share, before we go there to talk about your book, a little bit about your background.
Well, you know, I had a background for 30 years running various businesses, entrepreneurial, I suppose you'd have to call it. And while I enjoyed that a lot, it was probably the part that I enjoyed the most was the creation of the businesses. And while you do that, you realize that it's important to be successful. It's important to try to make money and provide for yourself and your family, and also the status, I suppose, you enjoy it at some point in your life. But after all those years, I knew that there were many other things I still wanted to do, and I've always been kind of a contemplative guy, so I wanted to go into writing, which I had done previously, but mostly in the form of poetry, and write down the things that occur that come to mind every day. A lot of times we don't discuss or write about. And in doing that, I discovered that there are a lot of people who probably have come to some part in their life when they're ready to try something else, and maybe they're not sure what that is, and maybe it's spiritual, maybe it's not. But for those who have a spiritual bent or a curiosity, I find there's a big audience of people like that. And maybe, which we'll talk about later, maybe traditional religion doesn't always handle everything that they want to move on in their spiritual life.
Yeah, and that is so true. The audience here is going to totally relate to you because a good portion of them started businesses later in life because for whatever reason they were probably doing a corporate job, maybe they were a stay-at-home mom. But like many of us, we get to a part of our life where we're just, is this it? Is this the rest of my life? Am I just going to go to a 9-to-5 and do my time and go home? Is this it? And sometimes we go within and we take that spiritual journey, and sometimes it turns into starting a business. How did it work out for you specifically? Because you said you were an entrepreneur. How did you make the transition from that to writing to taking the inner journey?
Well, you know, Christina, it wasn't as difficult as I thought it would, and possibly that's because I'm more mature. If I'd have done it at a younger age, maybe 40 or 45, it might have been more difficult. But I think it worked for me because I had seen the whole business world and quite close and quite detailed for a long time. And I think I was ready for the change. There was always a little bump in the road when you actually do it. I think you have to prepare yourself mentally to make any kind of a career change. And and really when you stop what you've been doing more or less and go to something completely different, like writing in this case, it is a career change of some magnitude. But I didn't find it was too difficult because you're kind of hungry for something. And if you can dig into something new, and for me, something creative, then I found it wasn't that difficult. What I have found interesting is people who I talk to about what I do, who simply say, well, I don't think I can stop work. I don't know what I do. I'd be bored. And my response to them is always, how the heck did I ever do what I was doing and get everything done the way it was when I was working, quote, working traditionally, I should say.
Yeah.
So, nothing to be afraid of. It doesn't mean that it'll be completely a smooth transition, but it's important to follow your heart, on these things.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and a number of guests who have come on in the past have talked about that, as you call it, the bump in the road that kind of gives us that nudge to kind of take that leap of faith and try whatever is in your heart that you might be holding on to. And it's interesting, Clark, because I've had people tell me when I get started with my business, oh, it must be so easy now that you never have to work and it's an ongoing vacation. And I'm like, that's not exactly how I'm experiencing it.
I don't think they have a real clear picture of that, the people who say it. But it's understandable because when you come from a traditional 9 to 5, it's hard to think that you're not goofing off, if you're not at your desk continually.
Yeah. And for you, when you went off to start your new path, was there any times that you felt a little afraid or like, oh, did I make the wrong decision? Because you said it was fairly easy, but were there any times where you're like, oh, was this not the right path or the right choice?
No, not for me. And once again, it's because I had so many years doing what I did. I knew that I was done with that. There's the tired old phrase, been there, done that, but it really applied to the way I felt about things. And I'm not sure if I had any doubts, it might have been about whether or not what I was doing was what I should be doing, in the sense that will it make me, a happier person or a more satisfied person? But that quickly went away. I think, nobody sits at their desk and writes, for 12 hours a day. It doesn't work like that. But I suppose to use kind of a sports analogy, if you kind of go into a zone and you're in that space completely, it's a very mindful way to work. You end up doing something with complete concentration, and a lot of times I've felt guided in what I'm writing, and it's a wonderful feeling. It's not something you can just call up and do or have, but it is a wonderful result of putting those hours into doing what you like to do. And so it's a way of kind of re-educating yourself a little bit on how you approach things. But probably the biggest temptation is to not do what you should be doing. When I say should, I mean putting in the time that you probably should be putting in. And that comes from various sources, it can be any pressures that you feel outside. I don't have a problem with trying to avoid writing. And I think there are some people who do have a little difficulty that way. I don't look for reasons not to write. Because I find it very, very challenging, refreshing, and probably the part I like the most is actually the editing, because you get into this sort of a zone, or you start writing away and you're happy, hopefully, with what you've written. You come back in a day or two and make some probably pretty big changes. But at the end of it, you end up editing after your first draft, your first blush of what you want to say, and then filling it in. And that's very satisfying, too, for me. I like that. And I like editing other people's work, too.
Wow.
It's an interesting way to go.
Well, I'm sending you my work then. No, I'm just joking. Last year I started writing. Last year I started writing a book with a co-author, and I find the creative part, as you were saying before, it's not a one-step process. There'll be moments where, I'm in the zone and things will just pour out on paper, almost like flowing through me. And the editing part, though, is so not my favorite part. So.
Well, I must admit it, for most people it's not, but that's really where as the old cliche is, that's really where the writing gets done. And I do believe that. I think you can, by the way, you can edit to death. I mean, you can actually go to the point where you never publish because you're always afraid you're going to have to make another change. And you will always see things that you wish you'd said a little bit different after you're published. But those are very minor things and very unimportant in the great scheme. So sometimes you need a nudge from somebody to say, all right, already. Keep going. Publish it.
Publish it.
Yeah. But I think everybody has a book in them. It's kind of a joke with some editors I know, but I really think everybody has an interesting story or something that's happened to them that they could write about that would be entertaining and informative for people. So, and it's surprising after you start talking to people when you tell them what you do, how many say, "Oh, I'd love to write a book," or more often than I expected, "I've got a book that I've started. It's in my top drawer. I'm still writing it." So there's a lot of interest in writing, I think, in general.
I couldn't agree with you more, Clark, because I've met so many people through the show, Savvy, and a lot of these people are not high-time business owners that you see on TV or something. I mean, they've created a nice business for themselves, are doing well, but that you wouldn't be able to hear about them in every kitchen in America. But it doesn't mean they don't have a fabulous, amazing journey and story behind their life. And I would like to read a good portion of their stories in a book. And so I do believe you're right. A lot of people do have a book inside of them.
Yeah, and sometimes, Christina, the question comes up of whether something's autobiographical, and the short answer is yes. Almost everything that we write has some element because it goes through the filter of our own minds, but it isn't necessarily autobiographical, and I think people can't be afraid of revealing things, which I think does pass through some people's minds about themselves, and things will come out, and you will have a slant on things that your very own, but your experience is important, and even if you're writing about somebody else's experience, it's important to know that, okay, you can write it the way you see it.
Yeah, I think what I'm getting from you is that I think people are scared of getting vulnerable, because I know for myself, it's not all autobiographical either, our book. It's more self-development. But in writing it, I had to get deep and talk about some of my issues. And it all came about from a blog I wrote called 101 Mistakes and What I Learned some 10 years ago. And it was just a fun little blog I did when I was back in corporate, writing down some mistakes I made and what I learned from them. And people around me loved it and whatever, but they were like, I would never write my mistakes on paper so everyone could see it. But I mean, that's the thing. I mean, most of us make mistakes or have our own journeys and quote unquote mistake because, it's just a learning process. Is all it is.
Learning process. Yeah, no, you're right.
Absolutely.
No, I think that's true, and most people are afraid that they're not quote good enough to in their book to write, and some people aren't great writers, but that can be fixed. That's not the story is the issue, I think, for most people, and you want to get that. That's the interesting part.
Yeah. So share with us how you came to writing A Monk's Way. What prompted you to write that book in particular?
I'll tell you what I was thinking at the time. I was thinking of writing down key things that have helped me. I came from a very strict Catholic upbringing, and with that comes a lot of other aspects of philosophies and theologies that you have to kind of work through. I found that. And this is not by the way a Catholic novel per se. This is not about Catholicism. It's not about knocking the Catholic religion or anything like that. It was set there because I wanted to take somebody who's in almost the deepest part of a traditional religion, which in this case is a monastery, and show how that kind of person has just as many problems and temptations as we all do, and also has to look at setting up a divine connection, a divine relationship as much as anybody else. So my monk, Jean Moreau is his name, is my everyman. And what he goes through is not going to be exactly the same as what we go through, but outside the monastery, but there are similar aspects and similar temptations. And in the end, the book is really more of a parable, kind of explaining how one can find the divine, particularly when the divine seems kind of hard to get, or maybe hasn't been tried, so to speak, very, very hard by somebody. And once again, it was probably aimed more at somebody who'd lived a little while, man or woman, by the way, it doesn't matter, who maybe wasn't getting all the satisfactions and answers that they could from their traditional religion, who wanted to maybe branch out a little bit and see what else was out there, and who maybe had only had experience in their one religion and didn't know quite where to go. So this is a general story about how you can keep your religion. It has nothing to do with abandoning your religion. It's about enhancing it and filling in the cracks, maybe.
Yeah.
And so the approaches he takes are the ones, of course, that I know something about and have done. And I'm writing a second book now that actually talks more about those things because it's too much for just one volume. But I felt putting it in a character and making a first-person report would be more effective. And I think that's turned out okay that way.
And this is revealing because I recall back at 26, I was belonging to a Christian church, and I had tried a number of them. I went for about 6 years to a Catholic church. I had grown up Lutheran, but we never went to church. And I think when I moved up here in my late teens, I took myself to church and had a falling out with that church, went to a Catholic church. Didn't have a falling out, but I didn't feel like connected to it. And I went to a number of other churches, all in the Christian arena. And the interesting thing, I like what you're saying there, Clark, because it's not about the religion itself, the dogma. It's about your own spiritual relationship to divine. Because for me, Jesus always felt super real, like a person that I could sit down with. And I would talk to him like he was sitting right here. But when I would go into these organized religions, Christian religions, they wouldn't really have the sense of my relationship with God and Jesus. So I actually got out of going to all of those different sects and say now, like, I follow Jesus, not even Christianity. So I could totally see while reading Amongst Way that you could examine your own journey with the divine.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Your experience is, your own, but it's also sort of typical as people who have been raised as Christians and want to be Christians and want to believe, but there's been so many layers of bureaucracy or condemnations that have come through with some of these religions over 2,000 years. That's just a human thing. It happens, to any organization at some point.
Yeah.
So then, that's where you have to kind of strike out and say, what is it that I'm really trying to find here, and who is it that I'm trying to find, and what's the true representation of that, the core of that religion? And as I've seen through looking at many different traditions, they all boil down basically to a divine connection. They all boil down to the same thing. And it's about love, it's about compassion, it's about love of self, which I think we've lost a lot in some of our Christian interpretations. It's been very much focused on mistakes and problems and evil and things, when actually, self-love is where everything begins. And if we can't achieve that, then it's going to be very hard for us to love anybody else in a meaningful way. So what you're doing with Jesus is a wonderful thing. I mean, I understand his personality. You kind of read between the lines sometimes in things like the New Testament, see who this person was.
Yeah.
But I think the older you get, the more you appreciate what he said, at least what we know he said. And, there are a number of very interesting things you can read, even getting outside the Christian faith, that will be terrific things to have some discussions about, and beautiful writing, that you get outside. So it's important to examine those things. And I think sometimes we felt we couldn't because it was somehow wrong, or the church frowned on it. Yes. I can understand why they might. But if you're ready for it, I think it's something you ought to do.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, this whole journey, probably, honestly, I said in the show in the prior past that starting my business was a 7-year journey to reading a lot of self-help books and stuff like that. But before that, I was reading a lot of spiritual books. And what got me on that train of thought and going that direction and building a deeper relationship with God and Jesus for me started with the book Conversations with God and reading his trilogy and then going on from there. So, I mean, I totally, everyone has their own journey. So whatever, pulls you deeper. Yeah.
Everybody, I think who makes that journey, everybody can kind of point to a pivotal moment or a pivotal book. I think that's important. I think my book, Amongst Way, is going to be right for some people who are in that frame of mind that we've been discussing. It's not the only one. It's just one idea about how things can be. But they can be very, very important to the seeker. But I do believe, too, if you put yourself out there looking, you will find the answer. It very much follows the pattern of thought of my monk in Amongst Way. It's very much about creating what you want, creating what your future will be by putting yourself and asking for help. Yeah. Open the divine, and you'll get it. I mean, I'm convinced of that. It's my interpretation.
Gotcha. I mean, I totally sounds like, having an open heart is where it all starts. Having an open heart to wanting to find the answers and to go deeper is where it starts. You can't convince anyone to believe anything. It's their own journey, but they would have to have their hearts opened up to decide, okay, am I even interested to discover more about the divine? And you know what, Clark, you mentioned something else very important that I think we should touch on, and that is the love of self being lost a lot.
Yeah.
And I know for me, I've had a lot of self-worth issues, and I think it's a big thing in our Western society in particular,
Yeah.
regardless of your religion. And I think that is where it starts, is the love of self, that if we had that deeply, that unworthiness a lot of people feel would fall by the wayside.
No, you're right. You really hit the nail on the head, and it's just one of those things that's very frustrating when you kind of look at it from the outside again and say, why are we, life is tough enough. Why are we doing this to ourselves? And that's kind of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's an easy thing to say, well, love yourself, but it's kind of a difficult thing to get to the fundamental of that and understand what that really means.
Mm.
I don't know why that happened exactly. Sometimes I wonder if it wasn't just to find a method of control, people. I'm not sure why that happened. But we've been through everything from the Dark Ages to the medieval age. I mean, there's been all kinds of things that have happened to people in civilization. So I'm not going to be too judgmental about it, because I think that also is a harmful thing to start judging, whether it's an institution or yourself. You have to understand that you walk a mile in those moccasins and see what happens. And I think as you get older and maybe more mature spiritually, you become more compassionate in general and more understanding. And I think that's where you lose this tendency to fight about things and to split hairs and to do what we've done in our churches, for a long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, self-love is number one. And remember when Jesus only gave us 2 commandments.
Yeah.
That was one of them.
Yeah,
so we have
absolutely.
As a Christian, you're particularly important that you do that,
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because it's a very hard thing to quantify, like what does love mean? But I found through my journey of examining my actions in life and the things, my fears, how I interact with people, that a lot of my actions were coming from that not loving myself, that unworthiness. And and starting to work through that, I can say, okay, this is why I reacted this way. And so I think for everyone, it'll be their own journey of discovering how that works out for you and how that manifests for you. But I think it starts, tell me what you think, but I think it starts with starting to ask questions. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think if you accept that you are what people tell you are, you're probably not going to get too far. But as soon as you start to wonder whether that kind of a thing is true, and it may be a formal thing where the church or religion says blah, 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 and you're not so sure, or maybe it starts at home when your parents talk to you a certain way, or at school. At some point, you sort of wake up and say, I have an opinion. I have a right to my opinion. I'm not going to try to say that, I'm the smartest guy that ever lived or a great philosopher necessarily. But what we want to get rid of is this whole concept of judgment and comparison.
Yes.
And that's where trouble begins. And if you feel inadequate, which most people will if they judge themselves regularly, that's where it's easy to then become judgmental of somebody else. It's easy to learn to hate somebody or to envy somebody. If you're happy with yourself, you're not going to go out and, commit anything against another person that you wouldn't want yourself. It's pretty fundamental, really. And I think those who have been problematical in history, some of the awful things that have happened, a lot of those people had very, very poor childhoods, very poor self-esteem. And, to compensate, bad things happen. So I don't think we can overemphasize that.
Yeah. I totally see where you're coming there. And it's not about placing blame and looking for some, institution or school or thought to blame for what's going on in your life. But for me, really, it was just starting to ask, okay, if I'm really angry and unforgiving at, say, a person, what is it about that's causing me to feel that way? Like, let me go deeper and see what that's about. And then I would.
That's right.
Yeah. And by asking certain questions like that, and for me, the biggest tool for me has been journaling. And then by writing it out, I begin to discover things about myself that it's really not about the other person. It's really all about me.
Yeah. It's a reflection of your feeling about yourself. And it's funny because, when you mentioned that, I was looking back at blogs that I've done, and one of the most recent ones is called The Open Heart. and talks a little, quite a bit. They're not long blogs, but it talks about the heart being the seat of emotion, but also how that heart has to be opened up for your very self, and that you have to cut yourself some slack, and not always look at the things that you don't do as well as you'd like to do, or that sort of thing. It's hard to do, but if life's a training ground, it's going to happen plenty, as we get going.
Yeah. And here's an interesting thing I realized several years back is I used to say I'm a perfectionist. And I was very proud of that. I was like, I'm a perfectionist. I do everything perfect. And then I thought one day, what is perfection? Because what I look at today as being perfect, a couple of years from now, I'm going to say probably it's inadequate and not good enough. And so it always leaves us in a state of not good enoughness and never reaching that quote unquote perfection. And so I actually have made big strides to let that idea go. But yeah, it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, that's a very difficult one and very counterproductive to be a perfectionist, that's for sure.
Well, you say you're writing another book, so share a little bit about what you plan to, put forth in that next book. Do you have any?
Sure, yeah. Well, A Monk's Way is the story of Jean Moreau, and it starts out talking a bit about how the monastery works, which I've actually found is interesting for people as anything else I've written about. Wow. There's just a lack of understanding of how abbeys and monasteries exist every day. So that's kind of is how the book starts, and it goes into his story about things that happened to him there and things he feels, and it has a few surprises, so I won't go into that. But the sequel, the follow-up, there's many other things that I think need to be discussed in terms of this divine connection. And so once again, I've created a storyline that goes with it that I hope complements that and makes it very believable. So the next book kind of takes up where this one leaves off. It takes up a few years later in the same monastery. And it, once again, there are some interesting events that take place, both personally and to the monastery in general. And from that framework, we build on some of these other ideas of how connection can be established and how you can recognize it. And it was just too much, I felt, for one book for sure. And I hope people like the character as much as I do. Funny thing happened as I was writing the first book was a couple of years into it, I went to a monastery. This, by the way, takes place in Brittany in France, where I live part of the year. And, France was a real hotbed of monastic activity up until the French Revolution. So there's a couple of monasteries that have been abandoned around me, and I went to one of them and one day, and I walked around the old abandoned church, and inside was a big plaque that was kind of high up on the wall. I didn't see it the first time I was there. And in Latin, it talked about one of the abbots who had done great work there for a number of years. And it turns out he had the name of my character, Jean Moreau. Ooh. So I felt, you felt the normal tingling as you read it. And then you think, well, maybe, I'm getting some help here, from someplace else.
I think so. I think so. And, you mentioning that there's a unique lifestyle to, being a monk and living in a monastery. A number of years ago, I was blessed to spend the weekend at a monastery in Kent, UK, because my friend was working there and I was wanting to travel to London. They said, well, stop in at our monastery for the evening. And it was a very unique space. And being with these people only for a short time, I think maybe less than 48 hours, just, I didn't get to see all of their workings of the monastery, but just being in the presence in the space was very unique and different and very awesome, actually. So I think really enjoy your description and sharing the journey of A Monk's Way.
I just want to tell people that not to be afraid to stop and spend a few days or a few hours in a monastery. You're going to find some very happy guys or women, because there's plenty of nun monasteries. We have one in South Dakota where I live part of the time, in Yankton. And they're just wonderful people doing all kinds of wonderful things, and they're happy.
Yes.
And you'll find a peace there that probably will surprise you.
Yes, it is very, very true. Very, very true. And I don't want everyone to leave here without finding out how they can get your awesome book and maybe find out more about you, read your blog.
That'd be great. Well, let me spell my name, because it's not always easy. My first name's Clark, C-L-A-R-K. And my website is Clark, and my last name, E-I-D-E. So it's clarkeide.com. And the book can be found under that name on my site, or can be found, Amazon will have it both ebook and have it as a paperback. My blog is under the Clark Eide, ClarkeIde.com as well. I have Twitter and Instagram and the usual sorts of things that you'll find. It can also be found under A Monk's Way. That's you'll find it easily that way on the net, either through my own site or on through Amazon. So it shouldn't be too hard to get. I've had some people buy it from in different countries of the world, so it's been very satisfying that way.
Yay. Well, I'm totally grateful for you coming to share with our audience your unique journey and also your wonderful book, A Monk's Way. And thank you again, Clark, for coming to share your gifts and talents today on Savvy Central Radio.
Well, thank you so much, Christina, and I hope to come back again, and we'll talk again about some other interesting things someday.
You betcha, and your new book.
Thank you. That'd be great. Okay, well, thanks a million.
Your business, your dream. How to have the business you love, the life you want, and the financial freedom you desire. Sign up today at yourbusinessyourdream.com. Hi, Chuck. Welcome to Savvy Central Radio. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you, Christina?
I'm doing fabulous, and I'm so excited to have you out here today. A majority of our listeners are entrepreneurs, and they're service-based entrepreneurs like you, many of them authors and speakers. And so, I'm excited to have you out here because you've also done a number of talks on how to make more money in less time, how to, really get on top of your goal setting and such like that. But before we go to all of that, share with our audience a little bit about how you became an entrepreneur and entered this world.
Sure, appreciate it. Yeah, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've started and built 10 businesses from scratch, a couple of them on 2 or 3 continents and in about 7 different industries. Anytime somebody told me I couldn't do something or somebody else couldn't do it, that was a signal that I wanted to go figure it out. And so I've kind of lived my life that way. But I did get a little bit of a slow start. I graduated about 15th from the bottom in a high school with 525 kids in it. And I was pretty sure that I would be the only kid. If there was one kid who couldn't get a job, it would be me. So I got a slow start with that stuff. And I look back and realize my background was absolutely perfect for putting me in the position I'm in today to help other people and help other business owners and entrepreneurs get where they need to go.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, Chuck, because we had a woman on. She was quite inspirational. She flies Black Hawk helicopters, and she graduated last in her class. and she was really an overachiever. I really want to do well. And, but the thing is, sometimes we're so concerned with being the first in our class when really the bottom line is, did you just accomplish it? And you did graduate, and that's the most important part. You did reach your goal. And sometimes it's not that you get there first, but you get there in your own time.
Yeah, and it's about being the bulldog. I think there's 3 things that make people successful as entrepreneurs. The first one is get moving. And the second one is stay moving. And that's be the bulldog, never give up, last man standing, that sort of thing. And then the third one is be willing to adapt and change and move on a dime.
So the bulldog thing, would you call that momentum, keeping it going? Yeah.
It's not the person who's necessarily the best that it's the one that keeps going. Coca-Cola was about the only apple juice company that advertised during the Great Depression of the 1930s, and they came out of that. There were like 50 or 100 of those guys going into the Great Depression, and there were only a couple that came out, and they were one of them because they just kept going.
Yeah, and that recalls for me too that one of those companies during the Great Depression that survived was Revlon, and I thought that was very interesting because who needs makeup, quote unquote, during the Great Depression? It's not the most necessity. You could say, hey, I do need to drink, so maybe Coca-Cola is something I could still use during the Great Depression, but you want to feel good about yourself. Coca-Cola tastes great, and lipstick makes you look awesome.
Yeah, it was. That's why movies and other things like that actually did so well during the Great Depression. And makeup and bubble juice was being the same category. I need a distraction that makes me feel good, and so they actually did okay.
Yeah. And one of the biggest topics we get on our show here is money. And a lot of small business owners, especially ones just getting started, really struggle with the making consistent cash flow in their business.
Right.
So you talked about in some of your past talks, how to make more money in less time. Share a little bit about your insights, so some of them will help some of our new business owners.
Yeah, and again, I've learned this the hard way over the years. In my first 3 or 4 or 5 businesses, I did it wrong. I did a lot of things wrong, which is what makes me so valuable to people, because I can tell them, no, don't do that. I tried that.
Yeah.
But one of the first things we have to understand is that we should never go into business to make money. It's the dumbest reason on earth to go into. And I understand why we do it. We're in survival mode. We got sick of the man and we quit, or we got fired, or something happened, and all of a sudden we need to pay a mortgage, and so we're out there hawking ourselves, and we're in survival mode trying to make money. I mean, get out of that as fast as you can.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with Robert Herjavec. He's one of the Shark Tank guys, and he says just what I say. Don't go into business to make money. Go into business to solve a problem. And if you're solving a problem, then you won't have to worry about making money. Mm-hmm. The other piece of this is most small business owners go in because of survival, and they never get out of survival. They never make that transition from trying to make money to what we call making meaning, solving a problem. And so we teach them the difference between being an income producer and a business owner, and we teach them the business owner's game. An income producer can be identified as anyone, no matter how much money they make. I know income producers who make millions of dollars a year. An income producer is someone who, when they are away from the business for an extended period of time, business revenue starts to go down. That's an income producer. I produce income. It's not the business that produces income. I do. A business owner is someone who can get extended periods of time away from their business, and the business not only makes money while they're gone, they'll add clients, they'll make more money while they're gone. So business owners figure out how to make more money in less time. That's the business owner's game. That's the objective. Mm-hmm. How do I make more money in less time? The industrial age taught us the only way to make money was to spend more time, but we all know that you only have 168 hours a week, and then you're screwed. Mm-hmm. So there's 2 questions to the business owner's game that we teach people under this scenario to help them move from income producer to business owner. Question number 1 is, whatever I'm doing right now, we should ask us everything we do, whatever I'm doing, is this the highest and best use of my time? Mm-hmm. And the answer to that when we first start playing the game is going to be no. 90% of the stuff I'm doing, somebody else should be doing. So then you go to question number 2. If this is not the highest and best use of my time, then how do I do it for the last time? And that leads us to if we're rabid about getting the answer to that question, that leads us to all sorts of potential solutions, from mapping our processes to automating to hiring someone to training to just stop doing dumb stuff. Yeah. So that's the road for a business owner. That is the rabbit road. And if people just took that one thing away from this talk, that could change their lives. Are you doing stuff that's below your pay grade? And if so, how do you do it for the last time? Figure that out. And figure it out one at a time. That's the key thing.
Yeah. Well, I really like that you touched on that. I know, several business owners, but one that's been in business for a number of years, and he's the sole business owner. I mean, if they were to walk away today, everything would fall apart. And I often say to my friend, hey, if you got dreadfully sick or something or couldn't work, your business would be, in no time, you'd be out of business. And in essence, you're working for the business, not the other way around.
That's right. And so that's an income producer. That is not a business owner. And they need to understand that they bought themselves a job. They did not buy themselves or build themselves a company.
That's right. So for yourself, you're your own boss, but in essence, you're still a worker bee, and you're stuck and being owned by that. And that's an awful place to be in. But what I like that you just said, Chuck, that's really insightful, is not just saying, okay, what is the things I should not be doing that are not income generating or the best thing that would serve my business, that are my talents and gifts. And then the second question is, how do I get that off my table? Because I think that's where most people stop. Oh, I can't afford it right now. There's no way I could afford extra help. Bam. And then they just stop there. And
so let me tell you the really bad math involved in that. There's all kinds of psychology involved in this stuff, but that's one of the big ones. Is this is a $20 an hour thing I'm doing. Mm-hmm. I don't have $20 an hour. I'll do it myself in front of the TV tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Well, first, you have to ask yourself, what is the highest and best use of your time, and how much is that worth? Mm-hmm. And a simple formula is, if you want to make $200,000 a year, you are worth a minimum of $200 an hour. That means you would bill for half of your year, 50% of your week billable, and you'd make $200,000 a year. If you want to make $100,000, you're worth $100 an hour. So first put a tag on yourself, turn yourself into an industrial age employee of yourself and say, I'm worth $150. And then go through everything you are doing and put dollar amounts on every single thing you're doing. That's worth $15 an hour. That's worth 20. That's worth 35. That one actually is worth 150. And you'll find almost none of it is at your pay grade. Why are we doing it? Because we think we're saving money. Really dumb math in that. If you spend an hour doing something worth $20 an hour and you're worth $200 an hour, you've just lost $180. Go do something worth your pay grade. Go do something worth the 180. In 1 hour, you can pay for 10 hours a week of someone to go do that $20 an hour job. And then you can make another 3 or 4 hours worth of money, and you've made $1,000. You've paid that person $200. You're up $800, and you still have 4 or 5 hours left in your week to go play golf. You're now making more money in less time. So it's bad math. And I know people say they can't afford to do it.
It's both, yeah.
Here's a great question you can give to your listeners for years to come. Are you making decisions based on where you are or where you want to be?
Love it. Yes. Yes. So true. Because you'll essentially just stay where you are and not move anywhere unless you start making changes, because you can't expect, okay, I'm just going to keep doing things the way I'm doing them, expect changes. And here's something else that's come up from my show. I've heard a number of people say like, oh, well, I need to put up quotes every single day on my Facebook page or my Twitter page because that's what people need to do. Or I need to put out my newsletter exactly every single week. And I'm like, who made up these rules? Seriously, why are you following these rules? And for me, I began to examine about a year ago, and I cut time and a lot of unessentials that were not necessary for my particular business and got rid of them. It's like, why am I doing this? Oh, that's right, because everyone else around me was doing it. Yeah. Is it essential for my business? Do I need to do it for what I'm offering people or what my skill set and value is for my business?
The 2 last words of a dying marketing program are me too. If everyone else is doing it, then why am I doing it? I intentionally, in 2006, when we started the Crankset Group, which is now on 3 continents, when we started, it was me. And I, by design, I did not have a business card and I did not have a website. So I wanted to demonstrate to people that that's not necessary for some businesses. Now we have 5 websites now, and we have lots of people with business cards. But I just wanted people to know that's not necessary. And I didn't do quotes of the day. I didn't do any of that stuff. Now we have someone who probably invests 30 hours a week of her position with us, doing social media, doing quotes, working with Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all that stuff. Yeah, we got that covered now, but it's not necessary up front. Go make a great product and deliver it with great customer service. That is the single best marketing thing you can do in an early stage business. A great example is Christina is a woman here locally in Denver that I know who is a sculptor. And she sells her sculptures for $25,000 to $200,000 per sculpture. Wow. She makes a few $100,000 a year. To this day, she has no website and no business card. And you're thinking, how do you do that? How do you get away with it? And she makes a great product. She delivers it with great customer service. And we all know there's no magic to this. Where do you get the overwhelming majority of your future customers? It's from your existing and past customers. Stop going after strangers and spend time with the people you already know. Make them happy.
Oh, thank you right there. That is expert advice. Yeah, I've worked for several corporate businesses over the years because I was in corporate for 25 years. And it saddened me to see how many corporate businesses I worked for would forget, by the wayside, leave the customers who'd been with them for years that were loyal to them because, we got to get new customers. I'm like, hello, how about the customers who started with us from day one? How about we give them a little love and attention and give them a call once in a while and see how they're doing? Maybe take some of the guys who have paid us several $100,000 in contracts out for a drink or dinner or something.
Huge mistake, isn't it?
Yeah, because I'm like, they begin to feel like you don't care about me, and they're right because they care so much about the new business, they're forgetting about the essential loyal people who've been with them from day one.
Yep. And as the old adage goes, it's 5 times less expensive and 5 times easier to keep an existing customer than it is to get a new one.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't pay attention to that. It's one in the hand. We don't understand that. We're going to go get the next one.
Yeah. And I really liked what you mentioned there about that one client of yours who didn't have a website and business cards, because I think the new entrepreneur is sucked in by, oh, well, I got to copy Target. They have a fabulous website that's like $10,000 or something, probably hundreds of thousands actually, or millions. Huge, amazing business cards or whatever. They probably don't have a business card, but you know what I mean? They have all this amazing marketing going on. And these small time entrepreneurs are trying to copy what they see some huge businesses that are now well established with a very good base and a very firm client base, try to copy them and say, oh, I'm going to do that, instead of realizing, okay, for today, I just need to take my gifts and talents, what I have to serve the world, and just get that out into people's hands, into people's lives.
Never copy what other people do. Just be the best version of you.
Yeah.
I have never thought about who my competition is. I write for Inc. magazine, and I wrote an article for them a couple years ago. The title, you can look it up on the internet. It's Your Competition Isn't. Stop thinking that way. Why do you think about your competition? Why are you so obsessed with trying to figure out what those guys are doing? Because even if you copied it, it wouldn't work. I don't care if people try and copy me, because they can't copy who I am. They can only copy what I do. And it just doesn't work. Figure out what you can bring to the game, what problem you can solve. Focus on what customers need, not on what your competition is doing, because as soon as you focus on what somebody else is doing, you begin to lose sight of what you're good at. Just focus on the thing that you can bring that adds value. And if people go to the other guy, it's because he adds value in a different way. He's not your competition. He's doing it in a different way. Figure out who your niche is, find those guys and work with them, and just get absolutely manic about figuring out who your customer is and focusing on them. And forget about your this what is it, the SWOT things: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
Yeah.
The only threat you have is your own inability to deliver a great product with great customer service.
Wonderful, wonderful point there, because I think people focus on what is the next guy doing next to me. And like one gal said to me earlier today, she's an author and she's writing on a specific topic of cancer. And she said, oh, like the world needs yet another book on cancer. And I said, yeah, they need your book, because your experiences will touch just the right people that need to hear your experiences.
Exactly.
Yeah. The same with any other product or service that you can grant the public that's most needed. You'll hit the people that just need to hear it in your special way, that you have it uniquely to give to them in a way that best serves them.
A great example of that is my own books. I've written 3 books, and another one's coming out soon. But my first book, the publishers, we ended up doing it ourselves, because I didn't like the game that you play with publishers. But I did one of the largest business book chief editor in the world. And the guy said, who's your competition? What book are you trying to beat out? What are the other books like yours? I said, I don't know. I don't think there are any. There shouldn't be. If there is, why should I write it?
Yeah.
And he decided, and then I pulled the book, because I found out how bad a deal you get with publishers. And when it came out in 2010, it was the number one business book, rated number one business book of the year. It beat Seth Godin's books. It beat Built to Last by Bo Burlingham. It beat all these guys, because I didn't worry about trying to figure out, how do I say what other people are saying in a different way? Here's what I have to say, and I think it's something that people want to read. And sure enough, it was. And we did the same thing with our second book, and it was a top 10 best. It was the number one bestseller and top 10 business book of 2013. Both of them are now being used as college textbooks. One of them is actually a course. And I didn't think at all about what other people were doing. It's just wasted energy. Bring your own self to the game and do it the best way you can. And if somebody wants to buy it, you got something.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I like, you mentioned earlier, how important it is just focus on the client's needs, not your competition. And that is so important. I think customer service, not only for the entrepreneur, the small business owner, middle-sized, huge businesses have a huge problem with the not paying attention to their clients. I mean, I've had some atrocious customer service from some huge businesses that we all know about, and it's not necessary. So share with our audience what you think some of the top tips for awesome customer service.
Yeah. The best customer service, number one, is your product or service is incredible. That's actually the best customer service. Make a really great chair.
Ooh.
And then deliver it hilariously. I mean, deliver it with the best customer service possible. Figure out ways to deliver it that nobody else is doing. It would be another way to do that. And to not mimic anybody else. Be yourself in that environment. One of the things that we miss on all the time, because we're craftspeople, something like 80% of all businesses are started by people who start with this sentence: wouldn't it be great if I could do something I love? That's a craftsperson. And the problem with craftspeople is that they start from where they're at, and they want to draw everyone into it. So their marketing, the way they create their products, the way they do their customer service, it's all about them. They don't mean it to be. It's just they love their chair so much. They want everybody to love their chair. Look how I create my chair. Look how I make my chair. Look at the nails. Look at the glue. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. So one of the great rules of customer service as well as marketing, it's a crossover, is meet people where they are at, not where you want them to be. So build a product or a service and deliver customer service where people are at, not where you want them to be. That's a huge piece of this.
That is a great point. I recall when I first started my financial consulting business, I had decided, okay, I've been in the accounts receivable arena for many, many years. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach courses to help small business owners do that in their business. Really, really awesome. Collect their cash flow, get things speeded up there. Well, you know what I found? They didn't want to know how to do that. They wanted someone to do it for them. But I kept trying to push down their throat. Let me just show you how to do it. Come on, sit down. I got this wonderful course. Just sit down. I'll show you how to be the best darn accounts receivable person ever. And I was losing business until, someone just said to me, is that what they want? Do they want to know and to do their own accounts receivable, or would they like to hire someone else to do it? Yeah. So it's listening to your clients.
And then the other piece of great customer service is what we call recency and frequency, the two rules of building a relationship. How recently did you talk to me, and how frequently you talk to me? We all need a very, very, very simple little drip system for staying in touch with people, because they will come back around. I'm talking about a newsletter once a week or once a month, a phone call once a quarter, a cup of coffee once a quarter with your key relationships, an event that you can bring people to, an annual party, so a few really simple things that keep you in front of people. And you have to make sure to do it from the perspective, again, meeting them where they're at. So your email isn't how great I am or how great my product is, but it's what do they need? We did this I do a lunch here in Denver, and I tested this out with 40 or 50 people for lunch. I asked them, what is the number one occupation you would never want to hear from again? One lawyer actually came in as number two. It was used car salesman. I don't want to hear from that guy. And then we spent 30 minutes coming up with ideas for how a used car salesman would stay recent and frequent with you, and why you would want to actually do that. And it was simple little things like sending out an email that says, your high school cheerleaders are doing a car wash at our car dealership. And next Friday, if you want to be loyal to your football team, come to the car dealership. Or when the clocks change, if you don't know how to change your clock, bring it home, bring it by in March, and we'll change it for free. And we came up with 24 ways that a used car salesman would actually, people said, yeah, I'd actually want to get that email or that call or that service from that guy. So meeting people where they are at, not where you want to be, is critical. And then figuring out how to put that into a recency and frequency drip system that is dirt simple. You plug it into your calendar and it pops up and you just do it. Or you get, ideally, once you get moving, you get somebody else who runs that.
Wow. I like that you say that, Chuck, because like we said earlier in our conversation, it's not about doing the exact same things you see other people doing. It's what your audience specifically needs. Maybe your audience will respond best to a weekly podcast or a weekly blog where you touch on their needs, or perhaps it'll be one gal does something really cool in my circle to keep frequency with me. What she does is she sends me really cool, interesting articles on business. And she said, hey, thought you might find this interesting. Yeah. And that's how she keeps front of mind. Right. Yeah.
I have a realtor who sends out an email once every couple of weeks, and I almost always open it because it's never about how great she is as a realtor. It's about interesting facts about the real estate market in the area and quirky stories about funny things that happened on the way to selling a house. And so it serves me. I'm interested, and it serves me, and she's figuring out how to meet me where I'm at instead of trying to get me to go where she is.
Yeah. Yeah. That is and you mentioned something else before that was really a good touch point. And that was, really do whatever you do, but do it the best way you possibly can, whatever unique way you can. And I have a guy friend who owns a clothing store, and you think, oh, who cares? A billion people sell clothing. No biggie, right? Well, when he sends out clothing, he packs it. He has beautiful boxes he's gotten. He, wraps it with tissue paper and put stickers in there for the brand. And then he, the outside is very prettily marked. Then he boxes it. I mean, the whole procedure, putting the whole thing together, must take at least 5 minutes to put the whole puppy together and mail it. But when you get it, the packaging is just screams that you took so much effort and time for me, the client. It's just awesome.
It's simple stuff. Apple has made a livelihood out of that. Tiffany's, I can't remember if it's Tiffany's box, but somebody's box. People throw away the jewelry and keep the box.
Yeah, Tiffany, I think, would fall in that arena too. Yeah.
So one of them has that, but Apple stuff comes in these gorgeous packaging, and you keep the packaging.